Thank you, Darla, for that song. And to the best of my knowledge, it might be the world premiere of that song. Who here remembers Ollie Gentry? Yes. Very interesting, eccentric member we had here for a number of years. And Lois found this song in your collection of things in your house, is that correct? And shared it with us.
When you said that, I just remember that my mom and dad and I went to Ollie's house when I was about 3 years old for a Sabbath dinner. I don't remember what my mom and dad.
I don't remember a lot about her other than she was a very strong proponent of you don't take a bath, you just use rubbing alcohol. Remember that, Lois? Okay, settle down. Welcome to my travelogue. As you know, Darla and I were gone for a week. We had the opportunity to be part of the It Is Written Pioneer Tour. Something that had been on our list of places to go for some time, up into New England and visit some of the Adventist historic sites. What an opportunity, and the timing of the year, everything about it was just absolutely beautiful. We're gone for a week, and I came back with 860 pictures. And I figured out if we look at each one for 5 seconds, with that in a conversation, it would take 71 minutes. It might just be me left in here looking at them. So I did the really tough job of trying to figure out how do you take 1 week of a tour like that with the travel guides that we had, the historic places that we went to, and take that, condense that into 20 to 25 minutes. I tell you what, that is quite a challenge. And that's why I've entitled it Highlights Along the Way. The reason for the tour that is written sponsored is that they started this several years ago as they go into different places around the world to hold meetings. If it's a particular site with lots of history and things to see, they are doing tours. I asked John Bradshaw why we didn't have a tour when they were in Dayton 4 or 5 years ago, and didn't get an answer to that. But they are doing a series in Boston, and it started last weekend. There are 72 sites. And as John explained, Boston is a very, very secular area, very intellectual, very, very hard place to evangelize. And they decided, because one of the reasons of deciding to hold it in multiple sites is because the logistics of traveling around Boston, and I can certainly attest to that. Traveling in Boston is very, very difficult. To just go a short distance can take you a long time. I was really glad that we were on a bus and someone else had to figure out how to get to where we needed to be. But the series that they're doing in Boston is entitled Compassion Boston. And it started in the local churches and will continue there, but the first week were the pastors of the local churches. Lots of advertising done, and we got some reports after the first night, and there was one individual who showed up. He got the information and thought, I'll check this out. And he was described as kind of looking like Einstein hair. And as they became acquainted with him, he's got his PhD, and I forget what it was in. It was some lengthy name. Do you remember, Willis? He came the first night, and the report that we got yesterday, he's been there every night. And it's just one story after another like that that's happening in Boston. So John Bradshaw and the It Is Written team decided early on to plan a tour of the Adventist historic sites. This was a one-time event that It Is Written sponsored. And we had the opportunity to be part of that. Southern Adventist University provided the bus. Jeff Blumenberg, you see his picture there. He was our driver. He's with It Is Written. Together there were 37 of us on this tour, including our tour guides, our leaders. And in that bus we spent a week. We traveled 864 miles through 5 states. And Jeff and his wife, driving the bus from Collegedale to Boston and back, they logged an additional 2,914 miles. It's absolutely amazing. Some of the places that we put our tour, put that bus driver in. It's like, can we really do this? But we did. One of the first stops was Plymouth Rock. We've all heard of Plymouth Rock, the traditional site of the disembarkation of William Bradford and the Mayflower Pilgrims. Remember the history that happened in 1620? The Mayflower you see pictured there is a replica of the 17th century ship. There's also a picture there of the Mayflower Rock, the 16 Plymouth Rock. And I had people ask me ahead of time, oh, you're going to Boston, you're going to have some lobster. And I will tell you that I refrained from having a lobster dinner. But I did include a picture of a lobster in case you wanted to see what a lobster looks like. We went on to the Joseph Bates home. And for Seventh-day Adventists, Fairhaven and New Bedford, Massachusetts will forever be linked with Joseph Bates and his discovery of the Sabbath. It was here that Bates grew up and established his own family. And it was from here that they traveled around the world as he rose to being a captain and part ownership of his own ship. It was in New Bedford and Fairhaven that Joseph Bates heard William Miller speak and became an ardent advocate of the soon coming of Jesus. It was here that he accepted the Sabbath, and he wrote tracts on that topic, and which provided the theological foundation for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Joseph Bates, born July 8, 1792 in Rochester, Massachusetts. His home, the home he was born in, was sold in 1835 to Anne Hathaway family for $450 back in 1835. So, boatload of money. And it remained in that family for generation and generation for 170 years, and in 2005, the Seventh-day Adventist Church was able to purchase that property and begin the restoration and preservation of this home of Joseph Bates, who means so much to the Seventh-day Adventist denomination. You will notice the stone wall on the right. It's about all that remains from the original. They're doing some major restoration of the house that's been rebuilt over the years. Then we went on to visit Sturbridge Village. What an exciting place that was to be. To gain a better idea of the era in which Ellen White lived and our pioneers lived. To be part in there in the rural New England area. Because we're in the world there of the Millerite movement in early Adventism. It's where it all began. It was such a sobering thought as we went from place to place to think, this is where it all began. That's why we're here. Old Sturbridge is a reconstruction of the actual town. You know, there were Millerite Adventists who lived and worked in the original Sturbridge city or town. And then we went on to Atlantic Union College in South Lancaster, Massachusetts. And here we find Atlantic Union College and South Lancaster Academy. Both began back in 1882. Over the years, there's been several name changes, eventually becoming Atlantic Union College in 1922. And to this day, it is the oldest Seventh-day Adventist academic center still in its original location. The original academy building that you see pictured here is now restored as Founders Hall, built in 1884. It makes this the oldest Seventh-day Adventist educational building that is still standing. Inside, there is a wood carving of the founders. Names that are prominent and mean a lot to Seventh-day Adventists and have for years. You recognize the names of Jan Andrews, William and Lucy Miller, Joseph Bates, and James and Ellen White. Lots of stories can be shared about each of them. You know, we could spend hours, perhaps days, reviewing and studying and reading the history of these individuals and the impact that they had as the Millerite movement became the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Inside Founders Hall, upstairs, the Miller Chapel. What an awesome place to be. What an experience. I wish I could show you all the pictures from inside there. Wish we had that time this morning, but we'll find time in weeks ahead, and we'll spend some Sabbath afternoons looking and talking more about Adventist history. But that chapel, on the upper floor, on one wall there was the original 1840 prophetic chart. What an interesting chart. What a lot to think about as we looked at that chart. But then up front was the William Miller pulpit. Not in its original location, but it was brought there. And to be in that chapel, to stand there and admire and look at that pulpit and think about the man who stood behind that pulpit preaching the Advent message, preaching the soon coming of our Lord. You know, it's just one of those things, it was just an awe-inspiring moment to even have the opportunity to stand behind that pulpit. And in the right corner there, you see John Bradshaw. And not too far away in South Lancaster, another significant Seventh-day Adventist historical building. Still at its present location, from 1877 when it was built. It was enlarged in 1897. February to March of 1899, it was where the 33rd General Conference session was held. It fit in there. And now today, for a General Conference session, they have to look and search for the largest venue in the world. And about 116 years ago, it fit in there. Think about that. And then you open the doors and you go inside. And it has been doubled in its length. About halfway up in that picture is where originally the front wall was. Ellen White preached in this church many, many times. You know, think about that. To be in that church, to walk in a place where our founders built this church, built this message, built this denomination that we are part of. And you think about the growth of this Seventh-day Adventist church. On the membership list, 18 to 19 million worldwide. If this church was to keep track of members like other denominations that don't actually have a membership roster, it's been estimated close to 40 million. And here you see the pulpit. At this very pulpit in that picture, Ellen White stood. Had to have my picture there. Very, very special place. And then we went over to Portland, Maine. And here you see the Portland Head Lighthouse. What a beautiful place to be. But to think about the community that we were visiting there, think about Portland. And this was the center of Ellen White's early Christian experience as she was growing up. And it was here that Ellen and her family learned of the soon coming of Jesus after hearing William Miller preach. It was here that she was converted and joined the Chestnut Street Methodist Church. And it was here that Ellen White was disappointed when Jesus didn't come in 1844 as it was predicted. It was here that she received her first vision and she reluctantly shared it with others. It was in Portland that she met her future husband, James White. It was from here that she wrote her first letters to the Day Star describing her visions. And it was here, we drove by the place, and time has a way of changing the way things look. Buildings come and go. But it was here that she was severely injured at the age of 9 when an older classmate threw a stone that hit her in the face. And there's a store, that's where the store is. There's a store in the school there, now. And of course we have to stop, and everybody's taking pictures of this delicatessen type place. And I'm sure that they have had many tour buses stop in front of there. And I can only imagine people driving by because there's no signs telling what happened, what this is all about. I'm sure there are people who drive by and wonder, why are you taking a picture of that building? Batteries in my camera died. I went in the store and they happened to have just the right size. And for whatever reason, I saved the package that the batteries came in. Gorham, Maine. Think about Gorham, Maine. This is the birthplace of Ellen White. The family moved to Portland about the time of her birth in 1827. And most of her early childhood was spent here. After her marriage, they moved back to Gorham, and there's just lots of connections, lots of things to learn about Ellen White as you spend time driving through Gorham and Portland. And here you see the Gorham Historical Society marker on Fort Hill Road. It was placed here in 1983. And then there was Ellen's twin sister, Elizabeth Bangs. She married a native of Gorham, and Elizabeth spent the remainder of her life near where she was born. She's buried right there in North Street Cemetery. Ellen White's twin sister was nicknamed Lizzie. Throughout the years, Ellen and her twin sister remained very emotionally close. And throughout their lives, Ellen sought to influence her sister spiritually and help bring her to conversion, which never happened. And then we go on to the Washington, New Hampshire. Go on to the Washington, New Hampshire Seventh-day Adventist Church. the birthplace of Seventh-day Adventists. The location of the earliest Sabbath-keeping Millerites that continues to this day as a Seventh-day Adventist church. Now, the town itself of Washington was incorporated in 1776. It was the first town in this country to be incorporated and named after President George Washington. This church was built in 1842, and by the end of 1844, through the influence of Rachel Oakes and Frederick Wheeler, more than a dozen of the congregation had become Sabbath keepers. An official Seventh-day Adventist congregation was organized in 1862. The church, to this day, seats about 120, and it still remains active May through October, sometimes for special events like we were there on our tour. There's a small group that maintains the property, like I said, April through October, because the road that it's on doesn't get plowed in the winter and there's very minimal heat in the building. Now, what a Sabbath day we had last week. I forgot to tell you earlier, Willis and Miriam, sitting over here, they were on the tour with us. And I think you can attest to what a beautiful Sabbath we had. The message from John Bradshaw could not have been any better. A little side story. William Fagel was also on the tour with us, and he had worked at the White Estate for years. And Sabbath morning, as we were up there in New Hampshire, Sabbath morning, John realized that his suit was back in Boston. And it turns out that John Bradshaw and William Fagel are the same size, so there was some sharing that took place. Sabbath afternoon, there's the Sabbath trail that some went on. I chose to stay back at the church and just enjoy that empty building as people were out on the trail doing other things. And just to sit there and think about what took place over 100 years ago. Think about what has happened, transpired over those years. And no one was around, so I thought, there's a pump organ. So I got to take the picture of the pump organ for Jerry, and nobody's around. I guess I can go try playing it. Don't you wish you'd been there to get to hear me? Then you look outside, to the right of the church is the cemetery. And you walk through that cemetery. We had a guided tour of the cemetery, and you see the names, you hear the stories about the people. The stories about William Farnsworth and family. The story about Worcester Ball and his family, and many others. And you think about these pioneers, and what they did, what they gave up, what they gained as they learned about the second coming of Jesus, and they studied their Bibles, and they learned about the seventh-day Sabbath. And you think, that would be a neat cemetery to be by on Resurrection Day. It's going to be a busy place. But as we went on that tour, there was something that really struck me as as our tour guide was talking about Rooster Ball, one of the members there at the church. And after a while, he became a difficult individual. And I thought, here we are at the early stages of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, and we have a difficult person. Some things never change, do they? But you know, he had a life-changing experience, and that's a fascinating story, but there was a life-changing experience, and he became a very, very well-liked individual. People forget all about his past. But I thought about that. I thought about this church that started with 3 people, against all odds. Against all odds, and then within a few years, they got to challenge somebody difficult. And I thought about against all odds, and this is where it all started, and that's why we're here. It made me think about a year ago, coming here. It felt like against all odds. But we're starting something in the community here. And then on Sunday, we went to the William Miller farm. Now the story of William Miller, and everything here, it's a long story. And we're not going to go into that story today. We're going to talk about William Miller next Sabbath. But I wanted you to see the picture of the road here. And the first Advent church that you see pictured there. Now the farm and Ascension Rock is beyond that. But here's the William Miller Chapel, built in 1848 by William Miller, recently placed on the National Historic Register. And you go inside, and on the wall it says, "For at the time appointed, the end shall be." Remember, William Miller, through his studies, said Jesus will soon return, 1844. "For at the time appointed, the end shall be." That's what Advent means. That's what Adventist means, believing in the second coming. It was in that chapel last Sunday morning that we had a communion service with William Fago as our tour guide, as our pastor for that morning. And you know, to think back 150 years ago to these people that founded, who found new beliefs through their Bible study and what they experienced, and to be in that place. So as I thought about how do I take a whole week and share something with you that you can take home today and make a difference in your life. What I've shared with you is some of the highlights of our tour, and there's many, many more. But just some of the highlights. But I want you to look at these 2 churches here, and I want you to think about the highlights of these 2 churches and what they mean to you. The church on the left, the Advent message. The church on the right, the Seventh Day. Those are the highlights along the way for us. 2 churches, 2 different time frames, around 1844 and 1863. But you know, those pioneers, they had a passion for that. They had a passion for the Advent message, the soon coming of Jesus, and they had a passion for the seventh-day Sabbath. And it was this passion inside them that caused their hearts burn within for what they learned and what they were experiencing. Here's those early pioneers: Jane Andrews, William and Lucy Miller, Joseph Bates, James and Ellen White. It reminds me of the text. And as John Bradshaw shared with us, Luke 24:32, they ask each other, were not our hearts burning within us when he talked with us on the road and opened the scripture to us? These early pioneers, they were on a one-way trip to heaven with these highlights along the way. And along the way, their hearts burned within. But you know, we don't have to make a pilgrimage. We don't have to make a pilgrimage like this to experience the same. You see, it's the presence of Jesus that gives us that mountaintop experience, and our hearts can burn within. But we need to learn the secret of the burning heart. We need to maintain the secret of the burning heart. A heart that can go through anything. You know, it's the simple dreary day-to-day events that happen in our life, the commonplace duties that we experience. Those things smother out the burning heart. We forget the highlights. And that burning heart becomes heartburn. And if it's because of some food we eat, we go find the Tums. And if it's because of heartburn within our church, we have another committee and we make more rules. We forget the highlights. And I submit to you today that the cure is to remember the highlights along the way. We all know the song, We Have This Hope. And I went back and read those words again this week. It has a whole different meaning to me. You know how many times in there it says, burns within our hearts. Just the words of that song. What a message it is for us as we can remember the highlights along our path, our mountaintop experience with Jesus, as we remember the highlights, the burn within the hearts of our pioneers, the very reason we are here today. Open your hymnal. Let's sing that song together. And as you look at those words, think of those words differently than you've ever thought about them before. Hymn number 214. And let's stand. Father in heaven, today we have walked through pictures, the area, the part of our country where our pioneers walked many, many years ago, against all odds, as they learned about your second coming, as they learned about the seventh-day Sabbath, and their hearts burned within. And Father, today my prayer is that if there's someone here who doesn't feel that burning within their heart, that you will start that fire, that you will ignite that fire. And perhaps there's someone here who's had that fire and it's gone out. Reignite it. And there are those who have that passion. And my prayer is that we place our faith in you, and you will do what is necessary to keep that passion alive within us, that our hearts will burn from within. Because as we think of the highlights, we think about the Advent message, we think about your soon return and your Sabbath day. That's what we want to focus on, and we long for the day when you will come and take us to be home with you forever. In Jesus' name, and all God's people said, amen.